Did you know the Bible was not written as one book, but as 66 separate books, written by dozens of different authors across roughly 1,500 years? Before we even get to the wild stories inside it, that alone makes it one of the strangest publishing projects in human history. Here's something most people never learn in church. The original Old Testament wasn't written in English or even Latin. It was written almost entirely in Hebrew, with a few sections in Aramaic, the everyday language Jesus himself likely spoke. And speaking of Jesus, he almost certainly never spoke a word of English in his life. Historians agree his native tongue was Aramaic, meaning every red-letter verse you've ever read is a translation of a translation. Here's one that surprises people. The Bible never actually gives a number for how many wise men visited baby Jesus. Tradition says 3 because of 3 gifts, but the text itself never counts them. Speaking of that story, the wise men almost certainly didn't visit Jesus in a manger. Most scholars believe they arrived up to 2 years later, visiting a young child in a house, not a newborn in a stable. Another one that breaks nativity scenes everywhere. There's no camel mentioned anywhere in the actual Christmas story. That detail comes entirely from centuries of tradition and art, not scripture. Here's a fact that stuns first-time readers. The 10 Commandments are mentioned in the Bible more than once, and the 2 lists don't say exactly the same thing, word for word. Let's talk about Noah's Ark for a second. According to the measurements given in Genesis, the ark was roughly the length of 1.5 football fields, making it one of the largest wooden structures ever described in ancient literature. And here's the twist almost nobody knows. Noah wasn't told to bring just 2 of every animal. For clean animals, the instruction was to bring 7 pairs, not 1. Now here's a name mix-up most people get wrong their whole lives. The Bible never says an apple was the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. The text simply says fruit. The apple idea came from later art and language translation confusion. Speaking of Eden, the Bible never gives Adam and Eve a wedding, a home, or even a described appearance. Almost everything you picture about them visually comes from paintings, not scripture. Here's a strange one. Goliath, the giant famously defeated by David, has his height listed differently across ancient manuscripts. Some texts say over 9 feet tall, others say closer to 6'9". And here's something wild about David himself. Before he became a legendary king, he was literally a shepherd boy who wrote poetry, meaning much of the book of Psalms is essentially ancient song lyrics from a teenager-turned-warrior. Speaking of Psalms, it's the longest book in the entire Bible, containing 150 individual chapters, each one originally meant to be sung, not just read. Here's a fact that changes how people see Samson. His strength was never actually tied to his hair alone. According to the story, his power came from a personal vow, and cutting his hair broke that vow, not some magical ponytail. Now here's one people rarely notice. Jonah wasn't swallowed by a whale according to the original text. The word used simply means a great fish, and the species is never specified. Speaking of Jonah, the entire book is only 48 verses long, making it one of the shortest complete stories in the whole Bible, yet one of the most retold. Here's a detail that surprises people about the Tower of Babel. The story never says the tower was destroyed. According to the text, God simply confused the languages of the builders, and they scattered on their own. And here's a fact about the Exodus that shocks people. The Red Sea crossing has an alternate, more accurate translation debated by scholars, some arguing it should be translated as the Sea of Reeds, a shallower, marshier body of water. Speaking of Moses, according to the story, he was already 80 years old when he confronted Pharaoh and began leading the Israelites, making him one of the oldest lead characters in any ancient narrative. Here's something almost no one remembers. The plagues of Egypt weren't 7 or 10 as a round guess. The Bible specifically lists exactly 10 separate plagues, ending with the most devastating one. Now here's a twist about the Ark of the Covenant. Its exact final resting place is never confirmed in Scripture. After a certain point in the Old Testament, it simply disappears from the historical record entirely. Speaking of mysteries, the Bible never describes what Jesus looked like physically. No height, no hair color, no facial features are given anywhere in the 4 Gospels. Here's a fact that surprises even regular churchgoers. Jesus was likely born several years before what we now call year 1. Most historians place his birth between 6 and 4 BC, due to calendar corrections made centuries later. And here's another calendar twist. December 25th wasn't chosen because of any biblical record of Jesus' birth date. The Bible never states the month or day at all. Speaking of birth, shepherds are the only group specifically said to visit the newborn Jesus on the night he was born, not kings, not wise men. Here's one that reshapes the whole nativity story. The wise men are never called kings in the original text, and their number was never stated as 3, only their 3 gifts were. Now here's a fact about the Last Supper. It was very likely a Passover meal, meaning the bread and wine Jesus shared held deep pre-existing religious meaning before that night even began. Speaking of meals, fish and bread appear as symbols repeatedly throughout the Gospels, most famously in the story where a boy's small lunch feeds a massive crowd of thousands. Now others facts we will talk in our next part if this hit 1,000 likes only.